So when I say that octopuses have 3 hearts, what I mean is that they have 2 branchial hearts and 1 systemic heart. But it's actually more complex than that. And if you want to know which one stops beating when an octopus swims, keep watching, because I'm about to tell you all about their circulatory system. Octopuses belong to a group of animals called cephalopods, which also includes squid, cuttlefish, and nautiluses. And like all animals, they need a way to transport vital substances around their bodies. And for most animals, that vital substance is oxygen. It's what allows them to respire and produce the energy they need to stay alive. Most of us are familiar with the heart as the primary organ in this process, but the way that octopuses use their hearts to move oxygen around their bodies is not how we do it. And in fact, they have a lot more hearts than we do. So let's talk about what makes an octopus heart different from ours. When it comes to our circulatory systems, there are 2 main categories of animals: those that have a closed circulatory system and those that have an open circulatory system. Closed systems have vessels that carry blood throughout the body, while open systems don't. Instead, their blood flows freely around their bodies in open spaces called sinuses. The advantage of having a closed system is that blood is more quickly directed to specific areas of the body, but it takes more energy to maintain. An open system isn't quite as efficient, but it doesn't require as much energy. Cephalopods, including octopuses, fall into the first category, having a closed circulatory system, which means they can have vessels that direct blood flow. But unlike most other animals, instead of just 1 heart, they have 3. 2 of these hearts are located near the base of their tentacles, and the third is tucked away near their mantle, or what we might think of as their main body. These 3 hearts work together to pump blood through the octopus's body and deliver oxygen to its tissues. Now let's take a closer look at each one so we can see how they differ. First, we'll look at the 2 branchial hearts. As their name suggests, they're located near the gills, or branchia, where blood passes through and picks up oxygen from the water. Now, you might be wondering why an octopus even needs 2 branchial hearts, since our 1 heart is strong enough to send blood throughout our entire body. Well, 2 is actually better than 1 when it comes to moving blood through the gills. Inside each branchial heart are 2 chambers, an atrium and a ventricle. Blood enters the atrium first, then the ventricle contracts and pumps the blood out towards the gills. This makes sense, right? A pump pushing blood towards the gills where it can pick up oxygen. But there's another reason why the octopuses have 2 branchial hearts instead of 1. If you've ever seen an octopus swimming, you might notice something strange. They seem to kind of deflate as they swim along, losing volume as they move through the water. While they swim, their muscles contract, making their bodies shorter and wider. As the muscle contracts, the volume inside the body decreases, which results in a decrease in pressure. The deoxygenated blood returning to the branchial hearts senses this change in pressure and responds by relaxing. The relaxation causes the heart to expand, pulling blood into the atria. Once the blood reaches the atria, the contraction phase begins again, pumping the blood to the gills. Having 2 branchial hearts helps the octopus maintain this cycle of blood pumping and chamber expansion, making swimming a little easier. But that's not the only reason. You see, blood returning to the branchial hearts isn't the only thing that happens when an octopus swims. Some of that deoxygenated blood actually goes straight to the 3rd heart, the systemic heart. And this is where things start to get interesting. Located near the octopus's mantle, the systemic heart has 3 chambers, 2 auricles, and a ventricle. Now that we've made it to the systemic heart, let's figure out how blood gets there. When an octopus swims, some deoxygenated blood returns to the mantle cavity via the suprarenal veins. From there, it makes its way to the 3rd or systemic heart. Now, even though the blood has already passed through the gills and picked up oxygen, it's still deoxygenated because the blood that's coming directly from the systemic heart to the gills is still deoxygenated. It hasn't had a chance to drop off its oxygen yet. So the systemic heart receives both the deoxygenated blood from the suprarenal veins and the oxygenated blood from the branchial hearts. And this makes sense because the systemic heart needs to pump oxygenated blood around the rest of the octopus's body. So which blood does it pump first? Well, the answer might surprise you. The blood flowing from the branchial hearts enters the first auricle of the systemic heart. At the same time, the blood from the suprarenal veins enters the second auricle. The two different blood types don't mix here, but instead sit separately in each auricle. Because the blood coming from the branchial hearts is already oxygenated, the systemic heart pumps it out first, before sending the deoxygenated blood to the gills. This means that during swimming, the systemic heart receives oxygenated blood from the branchial hearts and sends it throughout the body before the deoxygenated blood even arrives. So to recap, the two branchial hearts pump blood through the gills, which allow the blood to become oxygenated. The systemic heart then receives the oxygenated blood from the branchial hearts and pumps it to the rest of the body. Meanwhile, some of the deoxygenated blood bypasses the systemic heart and goes directly to the gills. And finally, the remaining deoxygenated blood goes to the systemic heart, which will eventually pump it to the gills as well. Now that we understand how this system works, let's go back to our original question. Which one stops beating when they swim? To answer that, let's think about what happens to the blood flow when an octopus swims. Remember that the systemic heart receives two separate inputs, the oxygenated blood from the branchial hearts and the deoxygenated blood from the suprarenal veins. The deoxygenated blood from the suprarenal veins is the only blood that's going directly to the gills without first passing through the systemic heart. Since the systemic heart receives blood from two different sources, it needs to make sure the right blood is going to the right place. And to do this, it relies on a structure called the stop valve. As the name suggests, the stop valve stops blood from flowing in one direction. Specifically, it keeps oxygenated blood from flowing back down to the gills. During swimming, the pressure in the mantle cavity is higher than in the rest of the body. This pushes the deoxygenated blood from the suprarenal veins into the first auricle of the systemic heart, past the stop valve and into the second auricle. Because of this, blood from the branchial hearts can continue on to the rest of the body, and the blood from the suprarenal veins can continue to the gills. But if blood from the branchial hearts were to travel back down to the gills, the octopus would be unable to efficiently collect oxygen from the water. Therefore, when an octopus swims, the stop valve closes, preventing blood from the branchial hearts from flowing back down to the gills. This means that during swimming, the systemic heart temporarily stops receiving oxygenated blood from the branchial hearts, which could make you think that the branchial hearts stop beating entirely. But this isn't true. Instead, the two branchial hearts continue to pump blood, but now that blood flows through the gills without going to the systemic heart. This is why the octopuses appear to deflate as they swim. After the blood passes through the gills, it returns to the systemic heart, which has reopened to receive blood from the branchial hearts once more. The systemic heart then sends the now fully oxygenated blood around the rest of the body. And that's why when an octopus swims, the systemic heart stops beating. Thanks to the stop valve, the blood flow changes when an octopus swims. This allows the blood that's already been oxygenated to continue circulating through their body while the deoxygenated blood returns to the gills. In doing this, the octopus can swim efficiently while ensuring that all of its tissues receive oxygenated blood. The circulatory system of an octopus is a fascinating example of how form meets function. Each of their three hearts has a unique role to play in ensuring that the animal gets the oxygen it needs to survive. Swimming uses energy, and the octopus must balance the need for oxygen with the need to conserve energy. By changing how their hearts work when they swim, the octopus is able to do just that. If you enjoyed learning about the circulatory system of an octopus, make sure to check out our other videos, and thanks for watching.